to say it's wonderful to see messages coming in, and thanks for all the support. We're in this together. So where am I from? Born in Thurles, County Tipperary, born in 1952, the second of a family of 7. So my father has died, my mother is still alive, thank God. So I crossed the threshold, if you like, of the very old primary school of Thurles in 1957. Not 1956, excuse me. I was never good at maths. 1956, I can't even subtract. And there you go, I was 4. And from 1956 until 1970, I was blessed with the best of education from the presentation sisters from the time, as I say, I entered the old primary school before the new primary school was built. I had Sister Angela Canaan, who is still to the good in Thurles. Angela was my first teacher of halfpenny class, as we were called. And I can remember every single teacher from that primary school and into secondary school. And there was a cohort of sisters in the secondary school, second to none. I guess looking back, they were in their prime, all those sisters, and were just given over. They really just were totally given over and totally dedicated to us, not just to the teaching, but to giving us and offering us an education for life. But I never failed to notice, even as a small child, that the sisters were watching out for the poorer child or the child that mightn't look well or whatever. So without ever hearing about Nano Nagle per se, I saw the charism, if you like, come out through the cupboard in the classroom or through a child having a new uniform or whatever. So yeah, that's where I was for those years in 1970. And then there was a little knocking at the door of my heart, which I tried to ignore, but it wouldn't go away. I did want to be a teacher. That attraction was there. And then it sort of came to me, well, you could be a teacher and could be a nun, as they say. So to make a long story very short, I thought of a number of places, but why Thurles? Why did I end up going back to my hometown, where my family were only 10 minutes away, but they may as well have been 10,000 miles away in that time. But, and my sisters were still coming to school. It was strange, but primary and secondary school. Why did I? Well, as I say, I think for me, it was what I saw of a genuine, deep concern for the individual and for the family. There was a care for us. There was an immense commitment. And one day I saw these sisters, they used to come down the cloister, and they were roaring, laughing, a bunch of them. I can still see it. And that was the moment I was in, and that's when I said, I think I could be happy with that bunch. And that was what tipped the scales. And the rest is history. That's 1970, and now we're 2001. So there you go.
There you go. And it's really interesting, Sister Anne, because that story that you tell of sisters having this deep concern for children and caring for people and the discreet help and making sure that people are cared for, that story is that comes through from past pupils, that we speak to here in South Creswell. So that, as you say, that kind of charism is just alive in these sisters who are working and teaching, and they're busy, but that are like an undercurrent of care and also a sense that they were kind of forming a whole individual. So it wasn't just about academics, about self-esteem and so that's it's lovely to hear the stories are the same in other presentation convents and schools around Ireland.
It's fascinating, I suppose. It's a thing you can't silence the spirit. You just can't. It's wonderful, and it comes through the charism, and that's really fantastic. Okay.
Lovely.
So well, you asked there about ministry. So I suppose then I was sent off at a rather young age to training college, and I became a primary school teacher, Mary Mackett Training College in Limerick, and I was launched on poor children in 1975. I recall crying my eyes out. I was in Feathered, and I remember crying, thinking, oh, they're going to realize they made a most terrible mistake in making me a primary school teacher. I wasn't that confident in myself. I grew into it, and I absolutely loved the children. No matter what class I had, no matter which school I was in, for 22 years I was largely in primary teaching, plus I was principal of a school also. And part of that time I spent 3 years of that time in Alabama, in Birmingham, Alabama, where we had a school as well. And that was very good. It was like that was my first exposure to another culture as well. And it was southern states. So that was all very good. I was the tender age of, I don't know, 28, I think, at that stage. Then I returned, I was back in Ireland, and so during this time, I was, say, from about 1984 on, while I was fully into teaching in Ireland and all of that, strange things began to happen. People began to bump into me, conversations began, people were searching in their faith. It was a very delightful time, very rich time. And so I began to work in that level of things while also working fully in my education side. And of course, visitation and meeting the parents and all of that went with that. Anyway, that all finally led to my being invited by our own provincial of the day to move full-time into retreat ministry. I was working then, I worked in Waterford for 7 years. So basically my time in Ireland was within our schools and then within full-time retreat ministry. And also then I worked for 3 years in Ballygriffin, where the great love affair began in a very deep way with Nano. Outside of that, I worked in Pakistan. I went there intending to stay for 10 years, but it got a bit of a something that like a parasite of some sort. So it was disappointing, very disappointing. I had to return after 5 months. But the beauty was that I've had fantastic contact and have gone back and went back in 2006 to work with the in SWAT, and also worked 2002, 2008. I have a wonderful connection with Pakistan. It has a deep place in my heart. Then outreach again to England, and again, much to the great innovation of our sisters there, Sister Teresa Phelan, who set up the Friends of Nano. So I found myself exposed to a whole new world of the lay people and the deep commitment there. So I've been very blessed. And then New Zealand was another place, wonderful, wonderful Friends of Nano. So these were places that I responded to as a consequence of moving into that area and working in the area of Nano as well. So Ireland, Alabama, Pakistan, Ballygriffin, and I couldn't forget one of our most important ones, short-lived though it was, we dared to dream a brighter future. And that, when I say we as a congregation linked with the Jesuits for the beginning of a new form of education, a new model of education, and that was in Cambodia. So that finished in 2019. So there you go. That's a potted version of that for you.
Actually, so varied. I'm not sure it can be more varied from primary school to kind of the idea of taking people on the kind of spiritual retreats, from the noise to the quiet. But and then all of that, talking to people, I suppose, about their spirituality and about Nano Nagle has been great preparation for the role you now have, which is as postulator of the cause of Nano. And I know that we've got a varied audience. We have 60 people or 61 people in our audience. So not all of that audience will be presentation sisters. So can you explain a little bit about what your role now entails?
I like what you just said there, Danielle. Surely I will. But it's just the image that just came to you is like stepping stones. And they're like little milestones along the way, and one thing was leading toward another. And I do agree with you. When I entered, I thought I would go no further than 5 houses outside of Thurles, and possibly I might be sent to our place on the mission. If I were to write another book, I might call it "And I Said Yes." The whole world changed so much. But to come back to your question, the role of a postulator, well, a bit like yourself, I really hadn't too much of a clue myself what was the role of a postulator. I am indebted to those that have gone before me, indeed, and have worked so hard I'd like to specifically mention Sister Lucy Troy, a wonderful woman who took the cause of Nano Nagle through until Nano became venerable in 2013, and also Sister Mary Grennan, who picked up from there and then has handed, I mean, the mantle has come my way now. But there was a wonderful woman, and I'm sure many of us have picked up the positio, but we owe a debt, an enormous debt to Sister Pius O'Farrell for that positio. I just love it. Before I never thought I'd see the day this would come my way. But many years ago, I would have been reading and thinking, wow, for a small woman, she was a wonderful woman in the work that I just can't begin to think. So I think that's important. So what's involved? I'm now appointed to the job, or the role is a better word to put there, I think, or the ministry. And it's a service to the congregation. So you're nominated by your congregation, but you get your appointment from the bishop of the diocese from where the servant or the venerable Nano comes from. So that's the initial protocol on that. So that has happened. What's my role? Well, as I understand it, it is essentially to promote the cause and to further the cause on what already has been done, building on what has been done for the cause of the beatification, because that's the next stage now. You know, we have closed stage 2, so to speak. So now the third stage, but the third stage is the beatification. The third is there are 4 stages, as you know. So this will be the third stage, and it's not going to happen. The cause will need that constant blowing of the embers, that freshening of the life, that that renewing for ourselves and passing it on to others and imbibing people with the vision of Nano, the charism of Nano. Not that they become other Nanos, but that they pick up and hear the heartbeat and see, where do I go with this and what this is asked of me? But then the promotion of Nano and making her known and praying and interceding through her, because what's needed now for the beatification purpose will be a miracle. Now, many of us will say, listen here, the miracle happened that Nano Nagle did what she did, and the schools and all of that, right under the radar. As I say in my little booklet, you know, it was on the razor's edge. That is the fantastic miracle of God. But however, canonically, and even the ecclesiastical point of view, we need a miracle. Now, all we can do, and it's our part in the plan of God, our part is to foster and develop that devotion. And we have it specifically in our way of life, our constitutions, we name it in number 8, and we have it in a directive as well, promoting that. Don't let Nano go down into history. She's alive, as I say in the booklet. I'll never forget that general. So that would be one of my roles. So you do it creatively, you do it, I mean, I am who I am, other people will do it other ways. So I will do what I can to create that. But I need others, it's not on my own. And that's where the friends of Nano and the sisters and everybody comes in on that. So that would be one thing. Collaboration would be another part of the role of a postulator. What do I mean by that? Well, say I was over in Rome, but unfortunately couldn't get back after COVID. So already you begin to network and collaborate with people there, the ecclesiastical side of things. And also I would like to, you know, you link with say, like the Irish ambassador to the Holy See. It's a good connection there. And I've made a little knock at the door of Monsignor Turek, who's that would be the Congregation for the Cause of Saints. They will be the people who, please God, at some time, will knock on their door and say, please examine this. We think we have a miracle here. But that won't be for us. That'll have to be medically and theologically proven at that stage. But we need to do our part of the work. It's God's will. It's up to God. God chose her. Now it's up to God, and it's God's business if he wants to say, I have something more I need to do for this person or that person, whatever the intention or the intercession might be. It's up to God to choose to use Nano as his vehicle of grace. It won't be to praise Nano, and Nano wouldn't want that. Everything for Nano was the glory of God. But if God chooses to use her, then that will be where the miracle will come. So we can't dare to go there, that part of it. That's mystery, you know. That would be another. Another would be, there are things in Rome, they're the attending of, they're called the postulators meetings. There are postulators for every congregation that further the causes of their founder, foundresses, or a number of them in some cases, depending. And so there are meetings, but that and the meetings of cardinals. Now, neither of those, I'm only, as they say, in learning. There's an L place, you know, and part of the package is to study lingua italiano. So I am at the moment swatting my way online, or trying to study language. And the other thing is then I need the language, and I need to have a working knowledge of the language, because it is required of any postulator that they do a particular course which is called Studium. Now, you hear it's 2 months or 5 months, but it's 100 lectures, I understand, in various areas that educate and prepare the postulator for the time when it becomes very important that you have the background you need for when you need to knock at the door of the congregation and so on, and maybe before that. So until such time as I have that studium done, I will not be, I'm, if you like, I'm a postulator designate in the eyes of Holy Mother Church and Rome. So there's more. Confidentiality would be another big area. So I just say those little few, okay?
So I mean, it's a fascinating job and an exciting job, because you're getting to share the story of someone you're very passionate about. And I suppose I can kind of feel that a kindred spirit in that our job here at Nano Nagle Place is to share the story of this life lived on the razor's edge, and to inspire people with it into all of the creative ways, whether they use it for their own personal spirituality, whether they go off and, you know, take on the world, or however way it inspires them, then they will be inspired. And the more people we tell, then the more hope there is.
The more the message goes out. And I want to come in on that, and thank you for that, Daniela, because you're reminding me of the importance. When I said about collaboration, I focused on Rome, but obviously collaboration with yourselves, with Ballygriffin, with the Friends of Nano, and of course with our Nano Nagle Commission. As I say, I'm only 6 months into the job, and it's taken on all sorts of interesting shapes and modes and so on. So anyway, there we go. But thank you for that. It's a networking of all of us together, really.
Yeah. Together we're stronger.
Yeah.
You know, it's you know, you saying you have your L plates on, you know, and that you so early into the job, and such a strange time, you know, in this time of COVID. But you know, there were lots of people, Sister Anne, who, you know, when lockdown was called, said, you know, I should write a book. And I know that we can all reflect and say that lots of us didn't manage.
All right.
And I suppose that's the next thing I wanted to ask you about. You know, you sat down and did this. So what were the circumstances of writing the story of Nano Nagle, the life lived on the razor's edge?
Well, you know what they say? They say there's a book in every one of us. Well, I hadn't thought about writing a book last year for sure. But how did it happen? Well, actually, I was in San Antonio in Texas. I had just begun a sabbatical, and lockdown came. So goodbye to sabbatical, and we just had to get back to Ireland. And I mean, same for anyone. People's lives were interrupted, and that was the reality. So we were just one more piece of the interruption puzzle. And so I was with another presentation sister, and we came back to Ireland. And the question was, of course, where could we self-isolate? It was in the early stages. It was like toward the end of March. So thankfully, she was thinking ahead of me and said, you know, we have a place in Laytown County. It's what County Meath, is it, or County Louth? No, Meath, is it? Got my head. Anyway, so good for her. We ended up there. And we had plenty of space to self-isolate ourselves. Now, we thought we'd only be there for 14 days, but we ended up there for 6 weeks. We just got there at the wrong time when Leo Varadkar said, wherever you are, you have to stay. And well, the rest is history on that. So while I was there, what happened? Well, what happened was all we had was the case of clothes, and in the backpack I had my laptop. So we finally were able to connect to internet, and then on the internet in April, an email came in from, he was then director of the messenger office, Father Donald Neary. And Donald was inviting me to write a booklet. He said, write a booklet, that was the end, but write a booklet on Nano Nagle, Messenger Publications will publish it. Full stop. 16,000 words, and the deadline, have it submitted by August 31st. So that was it. That's the brief. So I reflected on it and wondered about it, and it's a lot of hard work. I've written some articles, you write your thesis, whatever, and I said, oh God, this is supposed to be a sabbatical year. But I thought to myself, I was appointed officially, the news was out, and I said, gosh, maybe this is a way. And so that was it. And I said yes. And having said yes, when I said yes, then of course the thing was, I wasn't near base. Any resources I had, I didn't have with me. So I was very blessed that I could contact Sr Anne Lyons and say, could you ever send me on chapter 16 of the Positio, which is on the spirituality of Nano, at least that I could just be reflecting and getting into the mode. So I wrote, anyway, I was fiddling around and I wrote a chapter, and I didn't think, it was only a first draft anyway. And I said, well, at least I'm launched, but I wasn't getting too far. And then I was sitting in the garden, I think it was on Easter Sunday. I was listening back to something that Pope Francis, his own message. And then I remember there and then I just tore up everything. I was scribbling it on paper, and I wiped it off the laptop, and I said, no, now I know, this is my entry point. And it was the words, he'd used a lot of words, but the words he used that caught me were this contagion of hope. Like we were in the midst of a contagion. We didn't know where it was going to take us then. But here he was talking about being a contagion of hope. He talked about windows of hope, be windows of hope. And then, and I love that in this image, gateways of transformation. So that got me going, and it lit my fire. It really did. And I was thinking, as he was saying, I'm thinking, sure, this is Nano Nagle. This is what this woman was. And in an earlier draft, I even had Nano as a first responder. I was thinking, all the images were going around. So she's all of those things. And it's something about sitting with her, I suppose, that I began to really grow more. I asked her to help me get under her skin many years ago, in the best sense, or help me to know what caused you, what made you tick, what gave you that heartbeat, what got you going. And I'm grateful to her that when I turn to her, she seems to help me, yeah. And not least the times I got stuck in the book, and I'd look up at a picture, the one that Judy painted there for the 2018, that lovely icon, and I'd look up and say, Nano, please, let this be authentic. Let it be from you. Please guide me on this. And I think she was the ghostwriter in some way.
It does it. There's two pieces there. The idea that you're circling. You can't almost circle around writing, don't you? You're trying to think of where the point is, and it, the moment of inspiration where you see the path. How lovely that it came from Pope Francis, and it just there it was, and the book then really. It does take those themes and carry them through, and the one thing I thought was really spoke to me was the way that you took parts of the story. We know so little of Nano, the detail of Nano Nagle's life. It's so hard, and especially when you are talking about trying to really come to know her, and we have so little. We have this amazing, woman, like miraculous woman, but the little details of life are so little, and that's how you kind of get to know someone in a way. And there's bits of the story that I know that we have some of our ambassadors here who do the guided tours, Solstice here, who looks after our school groups, and there are bits of the story that I know that speak to younger learners, speak to people about Nano's humanity, and they're just tiny details that we've kind of snatched. and they become salient parts of the story. The poor people at the church door in Paris that she sees when she's flashing by in a carriage on her way back from dancing the night away, probably.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And that's just a moment for her that's important enough for her to relate later. I thought that's, that has come down to us. And then the bolt of silk, which, for people who don't know the story, she has brought back from Paris to Dublin in the wake of her father's death, and she and her mother and her sister Anne are living in Dublin. She's hunting around this house for the bolt of silk, and her sister Anne has sold it to buy medicine for a poor family. And you take these moments and you imbue them with something. I just wanted to kind of tease that out with you, because I think anybody who's read the book will know what I'm talking about there, that it's very special.
Okay, yeah. I suppose but I think I hear the question I think I hear you asking there is something about kind of like the wake-up call moments in our lives, maybe something like that. And the moments that maybe not immediately, in most cases they're not immediately, but that for most of us, we get wake-up calls and they wake us up and we go back to sleep, and then we wake up again and we go back to sleep. And then finally, if we're really listening, we waken up and we may have a lot to change in our life, or to be changed in our lives, but we're willing to go on the journey. And I think that's a journey of transformation, for want of a better word. I think isn't there, I'm sure you can put other words on that, but it's the journey maybe into being your true self, your authentic self, the self that you are before God, the capacity that's in you, but that can be layered over. Like say for Nano, then if you take Nano, it wasn't that that God was in the back burner. In some way, God was there, as the annals say, she never forgot the one thing necessary. But there was a world out there of glitz and glitter and bling and the fashion. I mean, she was coming home after her father had died. I was thinking about this recently. So they weren't home for the funeral. So she would have been in a grieving space. But in spite of that, she brought the silk. I mean, that was top priority, because there's high society in Dublin, and she's going to be in Dublin with her sister Anne and her mother. So she knows the period of mourning will come to an end. And Nano's wardrobe, by the sounds of it, and like for the little vignette pictures we have of her, wow, she was one stunning woman. So like, it's when you get a sense of the richness and the security, the comfort, the prestige, the position that this woman had, that cosseted her in some way from the harsh realities that were not too far away from her. In Paris, they were there, and her sister Anne could see them, and she was beginning to introduce Nano to them. But that was a really shocking wake-up call, I'd say, in Paris, but it wasn't the turning point. It was a turning point, I suggest. There are others much more qualified than I to speak on this, but I suggest for myself, it is a significant turning point. And she kind of, she goes into a little recluse for a while, but for God's sake, I mean, if you're over in France and if you're with all her cousins and the soirees are on and so on, it'd be very difficult to continue to keep yourself to yourself and say, listen, you go off tonight, I'm going to have a quiet night. I remember behind me there is the wonderful icon that was commissioned for the bicentenary of Nano's death, and it's by Desmond Kine. But I remember sitting with the children in Ballygriffin, a Cork girl looking up, and she was looking at this and she was saying, and Lord God, wasn't she a great clubber? Now, a clubber, I mean, you have to find a language that meets the people of today. So that was about 10 years ago, and clubbing was in, going to the nightclubs. So I looked at her, I said, that's fantastic. That's just exactly it. So Nano was that great clubber. And then I guess the mystery of the role of silk, God in the role of silk. Well, again, how is God at work? Here's a very interesting thing. God comes dressed up in the role of silk. God comes dressed up in the poor. And then each time it's the face of the poor. God comes centrally through her sister Anne. God, how did Anne know how instrumental and how much she was an instrument of God in leading Nano towards the face of God in the poor. So I think that would be that one. And then, of course, I was thinking a lot about it, like to lose your father and you've been away, to return home, and then you see the awfulness of the poverty in Ballygriffin, and then you move into Cork, and there's the ignorance. And in that short space of time between Dublin, coming home and being in Dublin in 1746, her mother dies, and then Anne, her greatest ally. I mean, there's a poverty of grief, the suffering of that, what that did to her. So I suggest, at least when I think about it, I think these are the things that occasion a converted heart in us. Like we're turned upside down, we're turned inside out. The fabric of our lives is just, it's unthreaded. Things that we think are important, we begin to say, that's not at the heart of it, and that's not the real me. This is the authentic. And so a person tries to hear, what's it calling me to? It calls Nano to this, it calls you to this, it calls me. But it's an ongoing call, and it's an ongoing journey of transformation. And it's a difficult journey because I think nature is very good. Actually, I was just thinking about it, looking out there today at the trees beginning to come and so on. I think those occasions are a bit like, they're moments when you've got to shed. If you're going to be free for, if you're going to be available or open to, you don't know what's coming, but something's going on in there, and it now will not go away. And for Nano, it's coming each time. The poor are the ones, they're churning her up. When that's happening, and then suddenly you're shocked. In a way that you realize, my God, I'm a sinner. My God, I've been missing the point. My God, I've closed my heart. Or I've, not intentionally, but I've done it. Then it's a bit like, now can I shed? Will I risk letting go? Will I wait in the darkness? Because that's what happens now. You have transformation doesn't happen usually in the light. It happens in the darkness. It happens in the shedding. It happens when the skin, you think of what is it? What do they say? The tortoise who has to let go of that carapace. But then they're in that vulnerable place until the next one grows. And that's what it's like. I'm sure Nano, but as you say, we only have to infer, but because she was a human being like the rest of us, and we know something of this journey of transformation and dark nights, we have a sense of the detail for each of us will be different. But she's led by that mystery, by that grace, and it is mystery. So she's like in a Holy Saturday space, I think, for a while, searching her way. Like going to France was probably part of the Holy Saturday, returning to be his sister. That was all part of that. Waiting, searching in the darkness. Something, it's not a tomb space. There's something being gestated in there, but it needs time when the heart waits, and it needs the time and it needs the space. And then whatever it is, the grace comes. She's freed up. She's able to open her heart to the unknown Jesuit. Home she comes. And she's set on her path. She has a sense the compass of her life is now, it's now directed. It's not that it's all free flow, no, but something is radically changed through that journey of transformation. So it's an interesting question, Danielle. It really is, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it joins together with your, the inspiration from the Pope's message. This idea of like windows of transformation and portals like that. She glimpses things almost through the window of the poor people in Paris and
Yes.
and then the bolt of silk and Anne. There's a glimpse of something, and then this, when she's in Paris and she's really speaking her heart, and the transformation is happening, and she almost then walks through a doorway and says, now I have to tread a very difficult path. Because when she comes home, and I think you speak a little about this, it wasn't an easy thing to go to come home. She was going to enter a religious order, and then she decided that's not for me. That's so brave.
Very radical. Sometimes as people used to say, you take the step of going into something, whatever the way of life is. That's a huge commitment. but nobody knows how things are going to unfold. And the decision may come at some point that you have to step away from that, that it's no longer right for you. I think it takes extraordinary courage to step aside when you've walked it carefully, prayed through it, being guided and so on, and somehow you can see, no, for me to stay, like for Nano, when she opens her heart in that time to the Jesuit, what was happening there was she was being brought to understand where you are being led. This is the voice of God. Here is what is being said to you. The poor have been there, the voice of God calling to you. Come back, come back. This is your vocation. This is your personal vocation. Like, she's not a sister. And back she comes. And it's this wonderful lay woman who has been, I love to think of her as this great courtship, that this kind of a divine allurement has gone on, and she's radically in love. And you know what Arupa says, what you fall in love with, what gets you up in the morning, what keeps you going through the day, that's what matters. So we need to know what fires us, what is our passion. That's nothing about our own selves. We're people of clay, feet of clay, body of clay. We'll make mistakes, sure. But it's about what seizes the heart and what captivates my heart, what holds it. Yeah. Oh, sure, there's so much you could say. I mean, it just keeps opening up for me. And I think for me, what really seals all of this is that deep contemplative power of prayer that leads into action. It's like a dance. It's the dance of intimacy. So they come together, they move in, they move out, and then she moves away into the streets. The music of love goes with her. She doesn't leave it back here. And then she sees the face and she hears another music, and she hears the tears and she hears the cry, and she senses the injustice, and she picks up the smell, and back she comes in the evening again. So to my mind, it's like a seamless robe, all of that in Nano. And it kind of birthed what I would call a prophetic spirituality in her that resulted not just in caring for the immediate thing, but in the effecting, there's the other part of the transformation, effecting lifelong transformation, not just in one corner of the world, but because of her global vision. It's extraordinary. It goes all over the world, So she lived that, I would call it that mysticism of service, and was encountering the Lord, not just in prayer, but finding the Lord in her life. It was real, very real.
I think actually in our conversation, it's so beautifully put, we've been chatting a little bit, which has been a huge pleasure before our chat today. And I think we use the term like a practical mystic, and you've got a lovely, there's a lovely way in which you express it, that, the two of the things that I really came across in the book, one was just the seeing the poor and just needing to help them to try and transform their lives. Mm-hmm. And then this constant contemplation of Christ and his life, and those two things are central. And as you say, the two things just come together. So there's the streets, and then there's prayer, and they seem to, both of them seem to fire her.
It's like there's a weave. It's true, and there's a weave. Like she dips her life into the wick of this divine energy, this spirit-filled woman. If you like, she's kind of leaning on the windowsill of God in the morning, saying, "Show me, show me, show me." And then out she goes with that vision. And then she's coming back again in the evening, and she's saying, "No, I have to tell you, this is what it's like," And I think Nano was very real. But that being said, I think I have to say my sense, and this is a sense, and I'm sure, as I say, there are greater authorities than I would be on this. But my sense is that when you come, she moves ever more into that relationship and into that intimacy. less is said, and it's more a leaning into and picking up the heartbeat of God, to the point where she even forgets her own body, to the point where she does not even know her knees are ulcerated, or if she does know, they don't impact, or she doesn't say, I have to sit down now because I can't kneel. The woman kneels for 11 solid hours on Holy Thursday night, the last Holy Thursday night before she died. I mean, that is a woman who's made over to God. There's sainthood there. There's mysticism there. You in the normal realm, you couldn't do that. You couldn't. So that's where you have to feel we're dealing with mystery. There's something God touched there. You just have to, at least I have to, pause before it in reverence. It's like the burning bush stuff.
This idea of suffering that she doesn't notice, I think even in those 16 letters, there's pieces there where she says, she's finding it hard because she's teaching in so many schools, she's coughing, and it's hard, like just the sheer effort of it. And she says, I don't notice it now. And she's drenched wet, and she says, I don't notice the rain now. There's, as you say, there's something beyond.
That's a very good example there, Danielle, what you're just saying. I think that, Danielle, I would certainly feel that's where she has been able to self-transcend. It's not I, me, myself, oh, poor me. No. And even that day she collapses, and she says to the lady who obviously knew her, I've a good mind to walk it off. Oh, you're a coward. Do you know that? Like, on the one hand, Nano, I'd say, was terribly, from what we can sense, she was extremely hard on herself, and by extension then it was tough on the early sisters, as they said, would to God that she'd been kinder to herself, and maybe it could have been easier for them. But they were so infected by her passion, nothing was too much for them. And that is the charismatic, prophetic leader. But they don't ask of somebody else. They don't ask you to walk the walk that they themselves have not walked. So it's words, it's deeds, but the deeds have been, I'd like to put this word in here because I think Pope Francis would love her. I really would love to talk to the man. Because he himself has a great, you see his more recent book, Let Us Dream, and Fratelli Tutti and all of that. The man is pleading with all of us. It's beyond every faith and no faith. Be people of discernment, pick up the scent and see, should I go this way? Should I go that way? What's motivating my choices, government choices, world decisions? He's pleading. And I think that Nano, she had, I would believe, a discerning heart. And I notice, I don't know whether it can be seen there, people might see it, that in the icon there, I find it fascinating, and it's my interpretation. One hand is in a very passive, receptive mode, while the other has a kind of a hint of movement about it. The two hands are not the same. So if you have an icon, have a look at it again. And for me, I think of that heart ablaze. She's sifting the material that's coming her way. Decisions have to be made. She was a practical woman, as you said. The letters are practical, they're businesslike. So you have to search for the threads. She would have been, I'd say she'd been familiar, because the Jesuits were well and truly there in France before they were suppressed. So I'd say she may have had a sense of the importance of discernment. She mightn't have been using those words. I don't want to suggest she was, but she would have been influenced by her time in France, I would think. And it might have shaped her spirituality also, Anyway, that's just...
Actually, and just to, there are moments where I have to say, for people who haven't signed up for Sister Mary O'Brien's talk, we had the very lovely experience of hearing a sneak preview yesterday. And there are things that Sister Mary will talk about in Nano's early life that she feels speak exactly to what you're saying there. So not to give anything away, but so just before we move on a little, for everybody who's now listening, and we have 67 participants in all, you have a question and answer box on your screen there. And if there's anything you'd like to ask Sister Anne, or if you have a reflection or anything you'd like to say in the question and answer box, we'd be delighted to hear it. I'm going back a tiny bit here because it's something you said to me about the job of, to tell the story, you have to help people to make meaning of it. I love the idea of the little Cork child saying, "Oh, Nano was a great clubber."
Yeah.
She, and I remember Sister Rosari talking to me about how, again, that retelling of the story by children, and they're making meaning for themselves of the story. And they were describing how Nano was on her way back from the disco when she saw the people. But I actually love that, because actually that, I know I'm speaking to lots of teachers here. That's constructivism. They've taken something unfamiliar and they've attached it, and it's sunk in. It's meaningful to them.
And I think that is the challenge for us today, for all of us. Young people, and I see it, I have a grandniece and she thinks I know everything about Nano Nagle. Oh, God help her. But anyway, but she is fascinated. And you have to try and find a language, or you have to listen to them and to hear from them. Children have a lot to teach us. We have a lot to learn from them. And I feel, from my experience, I was working with the secondary school in Thurles on the whole area of Nano. I was in a number of schools, but I found the secondary school in Thurles, I was called back again and again. They were a great bunch of girls, but their interest. And one of the things that struck me was the sense that she could be a role model for them. So I know that in regard to the booklet, and because they're doing, I was in another school and already they were doing the prophetic side, but they hadn't the spirituality side. This is a number of years ago. And that school was saying, God, this is great that you've come with the icon, because it's like Nano wasn't a philanthropist. Nano wasn't a do-gooder. There was a deep spirit, a core engine, a gospel vision that informed her life, her work, her decision-making. And I think it's terribly important. That's the difference. A charism comes out of the person is caught by a certain aspect of the gospel, and that shapes the way forward. And then we in various congregations will say, oh, it was this. So for us, Luke 4 is a strong, if you like, it kind of embodies that piece where in that gospel, Jesus says, I have come, this is a day of liberation, to unbind, to set free, to raise up. This is what Nano was doing. And then, like, that was then, this is now. And we have to find, and maybe it's more about to ask ourselves, what is our corner of the world? Where or who, it might be next door. Who needs raising up today? The raising up could be just, we say, oh, it's not, there are the bigger things, sure. But there's one small, manageable thing. As simple as a smile, as simple as being able to hold somebody and say, don't brush away those tears, because in every tear, there's a whole story. There's a world of suffering. It says you matter, you're important. So I would love people to remember, to let that catch fire to you. You matter, you're important. You're not here by accident. It's a bit like when we speak now about our sacred universe, that every time when a species goes, it can't be replaced. And it's a reflection of God. We're the same. And if you don't do it, if I don't do it, whatever that it is, when we come to it, but it's in that companionship with the Lord that we discover, now what do you want me to do? That's how I think of Nano, that little dance going on up and down the streets of North, up to the north side, down to the south side, over the bridges, back to the church or the chapel, and off again. Deep, deep friendship with the Lord.
You've used a beautiful phrase there, that you said, this idea of catching fire. It's something that I've heard so many sisters use. Sorry for interrupting you. They're on fire with Nano, or they're, there's this fire spreading in the world that is Nano's charisma, and people kind of taking it and doing the action, just as you said. And it brought me onto the thought of your hopes for the book. I kind of feel like it's to spread fire, but that sounds destructive, but in the most positive and wonderful way.
Well, that's fair. I know, I hear what you're saying. First of all, I'm just simply amazed at such a tiny little booklet. I mean, how God can blow the spirit through that. And it's wonderful. And I'm purely delighted that Nano is getting, I'd say she's been slumbering, and I think she's really coming out of the woodwork again. And it's thrilling. I'm thrilled for her. I really am. And for what will come from it. So, you know, I'm only a little dot in all of this, which is great, but a necessary little dot in this case. So, but if I were to put it another way, Daniel, that's good. But you know, I was thinking of there's an Arabic proverb, I heard it donkeys years ago, it's kind of this image. What does it say now? I will set my face to the wind, and I'll scatter my handful of seeds on high, and I pray that the Great Spirit will take them and, you know, send them to wherever they need to be, and that fruit will come from it. And I suppose that's my hope, if you like, praying that the Great Spirit will take this little booklet and plant new seeds of hope, new seeds maybe of questioning. Like, I would love to think that people, having looked at the booklet, are saying, what am I called to do? I mean, that's Nano. I don't want you, I mean, I wasn't interested when I was writing. There's plenty of histories, and there's a wonderful, for people who need and want to read more, you have Deirdre Rafferty's book and so on. But for me, it was just simply, I wanted to write a booklet that could reach the ordinary person like myself, that could be accessible, that wasn't just the history, but that is reflective and has filled its spirituality, and saying, and where are you in this? So that's my hope. And how are you living a mature spiritual life? Is it calling you to some new commitment? How can you play your part and be of service? Like the poor of our towns, our cities today, you think of the refugees, the migrants, the care of the earth, whatever way, like there's so much caught in the vortex of unjust leaders at the minute. I mean, I got the shivers there at lunchtime when I heard the 1 o'clock news and heard Putin sending a warning to government leaders worldwide, stay out of our business, while they allow poor Navalny, that good man, there's a prophet who will probably end up dead, you know. But the warning. So if you're going to go down, I suppose, if you take up the whispering of the Lord to you through the booklet, or if it occasions questions, it will disturb you. And I hope it will disturb you in the best sense to say, and where do you want me to go? And how can I be of service? And know that, where can I be a voice for the voiceless? Because you know that song, who will speak if you don't? It won't happen. So we have advocacy, and there are people involved in that, and our sisters are wonderful. So it's not about age and saying, sure, I can't do anything. No, every one of us can do something commensurate with the stage of our journey. And if that is only to wiggle your big toe, or to send a little light up there and say, like I said to my mother, Mommy, I'm doing this, would you please pray for me? And she said, I will. You know, like, so everybody is in it together, and we all have our part. So that's my hope, that we have a sense of that it's interdependence, and that it's not just any one of us, but all of us together, that we can come to a new, I suppose, a fresh conscious awareness of where are our entry points when we look at the landscape today. I mean, Nano had to do the same thing. It didn't all just come quickly to her. And I suppose then it's a bit like casting out your nets, scattering the seeds. What's the results of that? Can you let it take you to places where there's real action, real suffering, where you're bumping into God? I think I say it in the booklet somewhere, God put you in my path. It isn't, oh, I'm sorry. No, the poor have something to teach me. Years ago, we had an assembly in 1986, and I've never forgotten, I think the man has died, Father John Kavanagh, Jesuit from the States. And I recall him saying to us at one opening session of one of the days, saying, go to the poor, and the poor will give you back your charism. And for some reason, it has always stayed with me. And I know from my lived experience that those words are true for me. I've never had more joy than when I was really in the midst of places that were extremely poor and with poorest of people, but the happiest of people. So that would be my hope. And then we were talking about young people. My hope would be that young people can see Nano as a role model. I'd love to see, this is not a promotion of me because I'm not getting any royalties or anything like that, but it's a booklet. I see it as a booklet that could be given as a conferring gift, actually, a different kind of gift to sixth-year students, to people finishing school. They've gone to presentation schools. Thankfully, they know so much because of the commitment of our principals and our teachers in our schools. What a lovely gift that might be for whatever number of students to have, not just for the day they leave school, because they will keep that. They'll go back to that. Because what I've noted is, from my experience, children know about Nano today in a way that I knew great presentation sisters, but I have to say I never once heard anything about Nano Nagle in all my years in school. It was when I was in formation that I got to know her first, you know. So I suppose it's whatever way we can bring children, our children and young people towards Nano, that would be great, you know. And I suppose my last hope would be, and I'm quoting somebody here, Joan Chichester, I like her. And she's written a recent book, I think was called The Time Is Now or something like that. But she says in that to follow Jesus means that we must each do something to redeem our battered, beaten world from the greed that smothers it. And that's the repeated call that we're hearing steadily. I mean, Pope Francis was writing Fratelli Tutti before COVID started. You know, I mean, he's calling us again to the same thing. And Nano did it in her day, if you like, writing as in W-R-I-G-H-T-I-N-G, writing, you know, the world of her day, her little corner of the world. And now it's over to us. We too have to play, we're called to play our part in writing, if you like, the world where the axle of our world is tilting very badly. It's tilting in the wrong direction completely. Whether you're looking at climate change, you're looking at poverty, you're looking at homelessness, you're looking at economics, they're all part of the one weave. And even COVID, why did it happen in the first place? You know? So it's up to us who will speak, who will see, I guess, who will speak, who will act. If you don't, if I don't, you know. The role of women would be another hope, but it comes in there somewhere. I mean, great role of women. Look at this lay woman. And, you know, enough.
That's a lovely set of aspirations for a book. You know, that's a lovely idea as a parting gift from a presentation school where you have heard the story, and this book just adds a layer of spirituality that possibly hasn't kind of married with the story for them so a lovely idea for a gift. But I can see that we have 4 questions, so I might ask Saoirse to rejoin us and to just help us a little with them with those questions. And 21 comments in the chat. I saw some of them popping up, and it was absolutely lovely to see such encouraging comments. But Saoirse, can you help us out with thinking about some of the questions that have arisen?
Well, I suppose the first and most important question, Sister Anne, is where can we get your booklet?
Well, now, for those of our presentation sisters, they'll have received Fanning the Flame, in which there was a very good piece put in there in that, also telling people that the sisters, it's available through Monster Evan, and contact Sister Anne O'Mahony. So the booklets are available from there, and I know some sisters are already doing that. The other is Messenger Publications. You can get the address on the web. And Daniela, you will be, please God, soon. For anyone in the Cork area, they might be able to get it online. You've got some, and you'll be getting more if you want them from Monstrevan. Is that okay, Sorika?
I think so. And just to say, Paul, our retail manager and
Paul.
Nano Nagle Place is currently on the call, and he just wanted to say hello.
Hi, Paul. He's one of your great ambassadors. Thank you, Paul.
And am I right in saying that the book will be on our online shop at some point?
That's the hope, it will be, yeah. And also, I believe, now someone told me if anybody over in the west of Ireland, I believe Knock, it's online on Knock also. So there are a few places, but definitely Messenger Publications and our own place in Monstrevan for sure. And Knock have it online, okay?
Brilliant. We didn't have a huge amount of questions. That was the most pressing question, but just so much, so many lovely messages in the chat just to say thank you, Sister Anne, and that it was such an inspirational talk. Philippa Wall from the US unit says hello. Sandra from the Africa unit, Vera Butler from San Antonio.
Oh, gosh.
Mary Ivers from Ecuador.
Oh, Mary, yeah.
Margaret Hale in Alabama.
Margaret Hart, yeah. Oh, Margaret, yeah, right, yes.
Louise Gunther is from Australia, and she said she heard you speak in 2016 in Ballygriffin with the NEAA group.
Okay.
So she just wanted to say thank you. And Sandy Butler says thank you, and it's clear and easy to pick up on your passion and the wonderful kind of chats back and forth between yourself and Danielle, and she is looking forward to reading your book. So just so many really nice messages of encouragement for your book.
Thank you, Sorika, very much. Thank you. And thank you, Daniela, for all the trouble you've gone to and being such a great interviewer. Thank you.
Well, I have to say, we talked about, you know, you find your passion and what gets you up in the morning, and we get up to come here because we love it. So it was no trouble. It was an absolute pleasure. And Sasha and I sometimes think we should pay to come to work, but please don't mention that to Shane.
You may just have lost your next paycheck on that.
Well, on that very happy note, and thank you for just a lovely talk. I mean, and you know, you can hear you in the pages of your book, and you know, you said that you really contemplated Nano as well, and you bring her alive, and I know that you say you're standing on the shoulders of giants like Sister Paris O'Farrell, but this is such an accessible and special book. We're so excited to sell it in the shop, and it's been an absolute joy to have you. So thank you to everybody who attended, and especially to Sister Anne. Thank you, and we can't wait to have you home.
Looking forward to seeing you
to Nano Nagle Place very soon. So thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you to everyone, and thank you for your kindness. I appreciate it. Bless you. Sorika, thank you very, very much.
No problem. Thank you so much, Sister Anne. It was lovely talking to you. Just to say, the Cork World Book Festival were in touch with us, and there was just some technical difficulties.
Ah, yes.
So they couldn't join. So they didn't forget about us.
That's nice to know.
How proud can we be that we truly had the world at our event in having so many sisters from around the world?
Isn't that wonderful? Yeah, that is wonderful.
So
there's that gift side to COVID, actually, really, that it is bringing, we're becoming much more global, and it's wonderful. I know there's the limitation of not meeting up directly, but it is a lovely way to. It's great. Thank you, Sorika, for all your gifts there.
Do we have one more question? Is there just a quick question before we exit?
There's a Bride Doyle in Newfoundland, and she's wondering how she can get your book. And I know you've just mentioned a few places.
Yes, and I don't know what did you say her name was again, please?
Bride Doyle.
Bride Doyle. Bride, I don't know if, or Breed, I don't know if you are. I was in Newfoundland just for 6 days, so I won't be able to remember all the names of the sisters, but I assure you that if you contacted the sisters there, because I'm aware I got some emails, they've received the book, so they may be able to help you on that. Okay?
Yeah. Thanks so much.
Fantastic. Well, let you all go out and enjoy the rest of your morning or evening or wherever you are. The sun is shining in Cork City, and Nano Nagle Place is looking beautiful. So we're looking forward to welcoming